Hello everyone and welcome to a very interesting project. We are going to be using LeafletJs and NextJs to build out this cool looking map, and then we're going to plot out natural events occurring all over the world using NASA's API. So as you can see right here, we are first going to be plotting the wildfires. So if you click on this, it's going to tell you the details about that particular wildfire. And we're not only going to be showing events from the Democratic Republic of Congo, because if you zoom out, you're going to see that it is a map of the entire world, and this shows all the wildfires occurring all over the world at this current time. Now on the top right, I have a filter. So if I click on this filter, it's going to give us a drop down, and you can select any event that you want to check out. And of course, some of them are not occurring as of yet, so they don't plot anything on the map. But if I go ahead and select severe storms, for example, we're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 storms currently occurring, which are cyclones currently occurring all over the world right now. And if I go ahead and select volcanoes, then it's also going to show me that plotted on the map. Now we're going to be using NASA's API, which is the Open Earth, or rather the Earth Observatory Natural Event Tracker. And the API, if you go into api.nasa.gov, then you can scroll down until you get EONET, so or the Earth Observatory Natural Event Tracker. You can expand this and then you can read about it. So when reading about this, you have access to the API documentation right here. So if you click on this link, it's going to take you in another page, which is going to be the version 3. Make sure that you're on version 3 because version 2.1 is currently deprecated, as you can see right here. So make sure that you're on API version 3 and you can read about it, but I don't want to go too much into the documentation because what I want to get is the events API. So we're going to be using the events API. So you can simply click on this and it will scroll down to the events API. And this is the GET request that we're going to be sending to the API. So if I go ahead and open up this link on a new page, then you should see that we are getting some type of events on the screen once this loads in. And there we go. So we are getting a bunch of data from the API, and you can see that we get the title, we get the description. Zoom in a bit more. So from the API, you can see that we get the title, which is the API that we are using, the description, which is the description about the API. But what we are interested in is the events that we get back. So the events is an array of objects which describes every single event that is currently happening. So you can see that we get a bunch of items. We get 1,089 items from the API, and every item is an object. So we are going to be looping over the events object, or rather the events array, and then we're going to be displaying the title, which is the pop-up that you just saw, as well as the category. So we're going to be filtering the events according to the category. Now the way we're going to do that is we can hit an endpoint which is called categories instead of events. So if you go ahead and hit categories, then you're going to be met with all the categories that you get from the API. As you can see, we have categories and we have 13 categories. Now each category has an ID and a title and a description, which we are not really going to need because we only need the title right here as well as the ID. So we're going to be using this endpoint in order to create our select filter right here. And then once we get our select filter, we're going to be going into the events API. And when we go into the events API, we can actually filter it depending on the event that we want. And so the way we do that is we can go into the categories and say, I want categories that deal with drought. So if I copy this and then just add a / and then paste it in at the end of my link right here. Now, if I go into this link, or rather to this endpoint, then I'm also going to get back an events object belonging to that particular endpoint that I hit. As you can see, when we search for drought, we don't really get back anything. That's why you saw in the API, when I search for drought here, it's not plotting anything on the screen. But if I go ahead and search for volcanoes right here, then you will notice, or if I spell it correctly right there, you'll notice that we get back a bunch of items from the API which describe the title of the event, and it also gives us the ID, and then the category, as you can see right here, is volcanoes. So this is the API that we're going to be using. It is a very interesting API. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy building this out. And before we begin, I just want to mention this. I got a comment in my YouTube channel from 8 months ago. And this comment is from Avik Nayak. And he requested that TsbSankara Media had already done a similar project, but it is currently 3 years old. It is currently 3 years old, but it was 2 years old at the time of this comment. And he requested that I build an updated version of that project. So that's what we're going to be building in this video. And if you want to go ahead and check out the video from TsbSankara Media, it is an interesting video because he used the Google Maps API, which we're not going to be using in this project. In this project, we're going to be using LeafletJs. So you can go ahead and check it out if you want to build that project from his side as well. Okay, so now that we have all the explanations out of the way, I think we are ready to begin. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down because we no longer need it, but we need this endpoint, so I can keep that open and I can close this and I can close this as well, and I can close this so that we can begin. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to open up my terminal, and then inside my terminal, I'm going to cd into my desktop and into a folder called YT videos. So cd YT videos, and then I want to go ahead and create a new Next.js application. So what I'm going to do is npx create -next-app, and then I'm going to call it EONET, just like that. I think, you know what, let me not call it EONET because that is already a name used by the API. So let me call it Next.js natural event track. Let me just call it that. And then we want to use tailwind, so --tailwind, and we want to use ESLint as well, so --ESLint. And then let us go through the questions that it's going to ask so that we can create our application. So we don't want to use TypeScript. We don't want the source directory. We want to use the app router, even though we're not going to be building any routing in this application. And the default areas can remain to be default. So let that run. And then once it finishes running, we are going to begin. Okay, so once that finishes running, what I can do is I can open up VS Code by saying code nextjs-net, which is going to open up VS Code into the newly created folder. Fantastic. So there is our application open up in VS Code. So the first thing that we can do is Ctrl+J to open up our integrated terminal. And then inside our terminal, we can go ahead and run our demo applications by saying npm dev, which is going to open this up on localhost 3000, as you can see right there. And if I go ahead and open this up in my browser, then we're going to be able to see the demo application from Next.js opening up. And there we go. So let's begin to build out our application. The first thing that I want to do is go ahead and change this title. So inside our Next.js application, I can go inside my app folder and then inside my layout.js, where I can change the title of my application. So right here, I'm going to say Next.js natural event tracker using the EONET API from NASA. Let me just say that, then copy that and then paste it inside here as well, which is going to change the description of our website as well. And then everything inside here can remain as it is. So let's save that. And then inside our page.js, we want to go ahead and remove everything. And then let's just say export default function home. And then let's return an h1, or rather a div. And then inside this div, we're going to return an h1 that says Next.js event tracker. And you know what, not event tracker. Event tracker will mean something else. So natural event tracker. But we don't really need this h1. This is just to render something on the screen. And then the background doesn't really matter either. Now what we need to do next is we need to go ahead and install Leaflet and also install React Leaflet, which is going to give us access to the React components. So I'm going to say react-leaflet, and this should take us into the React Leaflet website. So just simply click on this first link. If you go into the npm docs, it will simply just redirect you into the website, as you can see right here. And so what we need to do is we can go into the get started, and then inside get started, you can go ahead and read about this if you want. But what I want is the installation. And so inside installation, you can read about this. and I'm looking for a specific part, and right here it says this documentation assumes you're already familiar with Leaflet, because React Leaflet does not replace it. It only provides bindings between React and the Leaflet library. So if we go ahead and check out the Leaflet quick start guide, we can open up this link, and inside this guide what we need to do is, let me just go ahead and find it. I can't find it. We need to go ahead and install it, but I can't find the installation command, but that's okay, I remember it. What we need to do is, inside our application we can simply add a terminal here, and then inside the terminal what we need to do is npm install Leaflet, which is the primary library that we need, and then we also need to install react-leaflet so that we can get the React components that we can use inside our React application, in this case NextJs. So let's go ahead and install that. And then as that is installing, what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back, and then back. I want to go back into the original website right here, because I want to go ahead and copy this example. So simply copy this example, and then back inside our Next.js application, I just want to go ahead and render it right here. And then instead of saying return, and my computer just froze. Is it frozen? Okay, it's not frozen, but it's not accepting my commands. Okay, come on. So we need to paste it right here, and then instead of now saying render, we just need to say return, and then we need to import these components from React Leaflet. So simply in VS Code, what you can do is just simply click at the end of this component right here, and then say Control Spacebar, and then it's going to give you a drop down, which when you click, it's going to auto import it on top for you. And then do the same thing for the tile layer, and then for the marker right there, and then for the pop-up as well, and it auto imports it on the top. Now if I go ahead and save that, we're going to get an error on the screen, and let me just show you the error. And oops, did not mean to do that. Let's go back. Okay, so there's the error. It says create context is not a function. That is because React Leaflet uses use context under the hood. So what we need to do is simply change this into a client component. So let's go ahead and say use client, because remember by default Next.js is server rendered. So if you want to use client functions such as the use context, which gives you access to the create context, then you need to change this into a client component. So once you have that imported, if you save it, then we should be able to see something on the screen. Let this reload, and there we go. Would you look at that? We have a semblance of a map which looks very ugly. Now the reason why it looks like so is because we don't have the CSS from Leaflet imported. So let's go ahead and fix that. So right on the bottom, I'm going to say import, and we're importing from, let me remember, Leaflet /dist/leaflet.css. I think that should be it. Let's save that. Let's see what happens on the screen, and we should have nothing. Okay, so we have nothing. Now the reason why we have nothing is because the map container needs to have a height on it. So I can simply go ahead and add a style here, and then give it a style object and give it a height of 100 viewport heights, and then I'm going to give it a width of 100 viewport widths. And then when I save that, we should now see our map on the screen right there. Would you look at that? So now we have our map running as we want it to run. Now I want to be able to zoom in when I scroll using my mouse. So what we need to do is just simply change this into true, so that now we are going to be able to zoom in using the mouse. So I can zoom in and zoom out using my mouse. Now once we have that, let's go ahead and fix this icon. See how this icon shows the alt image? We don't want that to happen. What we need to happen is we need to show an actual icon, or an icon of our choosing. Now the way we do that is the following. I'm going to go ahead and inside my workspace, I'm going to create a new folder called components, and then inside my components folder, I'm going to create a new file called icon.js. Now inside my icon.js, what I'm going to do is, and you know what, just because it's going to be easier, let me just go ahead and copy paste it, because it's not really that big a block of code. So let me just go ahead and copy paste it. So what we're doing here is we're importing L from Leaflet, which is a component that we can get from Leaflet, where we can define our icon, or the icon that we want to show in our map. So we are saying that the icon size is going to be 32 by 40. The icon anchor is going to be 10 by 4. And then the pop-up anchor, which is the pop-up text that pops up when we click on the icon, is going to be upwards by 2 and minus negative 40. And then the icon URL is going to be the /events.svg. Now I want to speak a little about this. Make sure that the icon that you want to use is served from the public folder, because for some reason, if the icon is in any other folder, it doesn't work. So make sure that you place the icon inside your public folder so that you can reference it as follows. And as you can see right now, I don't have the icon, but I'm going to go ahead and drop it in right away. Okay, so I've dropped in the events icon that we're going to use. So events.svg, I've dropped it in right inside here. And if you don't have it, you can simply go ahead and download it from the repository, or you can just simply clone the repository, which is linked in the description, by the way. So you can go ahead and clone it, and then you're going to have access to the SVG image, as you can see right here. So we can go ahead and save this icon. And then now what we need to do is inside the page.js, inside the marker, we can pass in an icon property here, or rather an icon prop, and then set it equal to the icon component which you've just created. Make sure that it is the component /icon which you've just created, and make sure that you import it correctly. Now, when I go ahead and save that, then we should see our icon right there. Would you look at that? So that is the icon that we created. You can see that when I zoom out, it kind of becomes bigger, but not really. It's only that the map is becoming smaller. And then when I zoom in, the icon also zooms in correctly to that particular position. Now, if you're wondering why the icon is static right here, it's because we are defining a position array here, which is the latitude and the longitude. And then we are saying that the map container, the center of the map, should be equal to the position which I've just defined. So that's why the position is in the city of London, because these are the coordinates for that particular point on the map. So now next, what I want to do is I want to zoom out a bit. So let me zoom out to about 4. I think the maximum is 13 or 14 and the minimum is 1. So I want to zoom out to about 4 so that it zooms out quite a bit when the map first loads in. And I think that is going to be okay. That is going to be okay. So we have the basic things up and running. We have our icon and we have our map. So now what we need to do next is we need to go ahead and get the data from the NASA API. And so what I'm going to do is the following. I want to go ahead and get the volcanoes because there are fewer of them, because when I was testing this out, when I was getting the wildfires, because there are so many, it took a lot of time to plot them in the map. So I want to use the volcanoes because they are significantly less. So let me go ahead and copy this link. And what we need to do is we need to begin to get our data, or to fetch our data. So what I'm going to do is right on top right here, I'm going to say import React. And we don't need to import React because we only need the use state and the use effect, because this is a client component. We cannot use server-side fetching, and this is going to be coming from React. And then I'm going to set up my state value. So I'm going to say const events and set events. This is going to be equal to use state, and by default it's going to be an empty array. And then once I do that, I'm going to create our function to actually fetch our data. So I'm going to say async function get events, and then inside here I'm going to say const res is equal to await fetch, and then we're going to be fetching from a URL right here. And notice that I've placed it inside backticks, because what we are going to do eventually is this is going to be dynamic depending on the option that we select. And then I'm going to say const data is equal to await res.json, so that it returns the data in JSON format. And then I'm going to say set events into the data, but take a look at the API. We are getting the data that we're getting is this entire object. So we don't want to set our data into the entire object. We want to go into the object and then set it equal to the events array, because that is the important one that we need. So what I'm going to do is say set events into the data.events, like so, events. And then right below this, I'm going to call my use effect. So use effect, I'm going to pass in my callback function, and then an empty dependency array so that it only runs on the initial render. And then inside the use effect, I'm going to call my get events function. So let's go ahead and save that, and you know what, we can console log this to the screen. So console log the data.events, that we see the events that we're getting back on the screen. Let me close this page, and we need this page to go into categories. So categories, and that should be okay. Now let's go ahead and inspect so that we can see what we're getting back in the console. And if we check the console, once it loads in right here, you can see that we get an array of 29 items, meaning there are 29 active volcanoes currently all over the world. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and grab this data from here and then represent it on our map to plot it out on our map. So what we're going to do is the following. I want to go ahead and do a bit of refactoring because I don't want this map to appear here. So I'm going to cut it out, and then I'm going to render out a map component, which we don't yet have. So I'm going to create it right away. So we're going to create a new file inside our components, and I'm going to call it map.js. And then inside here, I'm going to say RFC, which is going to generate a React function component and export it as default. And I'm going to rename this to map. But then inside our return, I don't want to return this div. I want to return what I had cut. And then we need to import these components. Let's just simply go ahead and grab them from here. So all this, grab it, cut it out, and paste it here. And then when I save that, and then I can go ahead here, auto import it, delete not on this one, the second one. Okay. And then save that, let this come down. So when I save that, then nothing should change on the screen. So it says position is not defined because we need this. So cut it out from here and then paste it on top. And then now save that, and we should see, oops, I'm getting an error somewhere. Okay, there we go. So our map is still the same. So now what we need to do is the following. I'm going to go ahead and instead of just returning the map component, I'm going to return a div. And then inside this div, I'm going to have in my map. And now what needs to happen is the map right here needs access to the events, which is an empty array by default. But then once the data is fetched, then it is no longer an empty array. So we can remove the console log because we don't need it. But then what we need to do is we can go ahead and pass in the events here. So I'm going to pass in the events as a prop. So I'm going to say that the events prop is going to be equal to the events state value. And that's the reason why we still need use client, because we are passing in props. So you cannot pass in props into client components, into server components, sorry. It needs to be a client component. So let's save that. And then let's go ahead back inside our map.js. We can now destructure the events. And then what we need to do is for every event that we have, then we need a separate marker for it. So instead of just rendering a single marker here, I'm going to cut this out. And then I'm going to say that events.map, because we know that it is an array. And then for every event that we get back, I'm going to say return a marker component, which has a pop-up inside. And then the icon is going to be the very same icon that we created. And then the position, we know that the position is an array, right? So what we can do inside here is, because we don't want to render this static array, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pass in my array, and then I'm going to say that we want to get the event dot, and then we need to get the latitude and the longitude. So right here, you can see that we can go into the events. Let me zoom out just a bit. We can go into the events, and every event object has a categories array. And sorry, it's not the categories array that I want. I want the geometry array right here. And then inside the geometry array, we have the coordinates array. So what we need to do is pass in these two items. So this is the latitude, and then this is the longitude. So what we're going to do is the following. We're going to say that event.geometry, and we want to go ahead and say geometry is an array, so we can use array notation to access it. So I'm going to say access the first element by saying square brackets 0, and then I'm going to say dot coordinates. Is it coordinates? Yes, coordinates. And then inside the coordinates, I want to get the second item, which is index number 1. Now, why the second item? Because the second item is the latitude, and the way Leaflet plots its map is that it needs the latitude first and then the longitude. So once we have the event right here, I'm going to copy this part, copy, and then place a comma right here, and then paste it in, and then change this to 0 so that it now gets the longitude. So I think when I save that, then we should be able to see something on the screen. Look at that. Look at that. Did you see it? So we have one event here, we have another event there, and we have multiple events all over the map, as you can see. Now all we need to do is just change this text because we don't want it to say this. So what we need it to say is the event title. So I'm going to say event.title, and then when I save that, it's going to reload. And then once it reloads, I can click here and you can see that it now says the title of that particular event, which is a volcano, and so on and so forth, as you can see. Looking fantastic. Now you can go ahead and test this out a bit more if you want. You can change this into wildfires, and when you change it into wildfires, it's going to reload, of course. And then once it reloads, then it's going to show you all the wildfires happening all over the earth. But like I said, the wildfires are so many that it takes quite a bit of time to plot them all on the map, as you can see. But you can see that our events plotting on the map is working correctly. Now you can click on an event here just to make sure that it is in the correct country, just in case you messed up the what's it called, the coordinates right here. I did that before, so that's how I know that we need to do this first of all, and then this one. So that's how I messed it up, and then that's how I found out the hard way, really. Okay, now once we have that, then what you need to do is, let me set this back to volcanoes so that my computer stops freezing. So once I set it back to volcanoes, what we need to do is we need a state value that is going to keep track of this for every time that it changes, and then we need to create a select option which is going to have all the options for our events. Okay, so right away, let's go ahead and create our state value, which is going to keep track of the events. So I'm going to call this state value event type. So event type, and set event type. And this is going to be equal to useState. And by default, I'm just going to set it into volcanoes. Let me just say that, so that we can get the same data. And then now we can substitute it right here by removing that and then saying $ curly brackets and then setting it to the event type. So what this is going to do is that it's going to substitute the string right here for the event type. Now, when I save that, nothing is going to change on the screen because we're not really doing anything different, right? Now, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create our form. So I'm going to create a form here with no action. And then this form is going to have a select, come on. And then the select here is going to say event type with an ID of event type. And then the select takes in options. So if I pass in an option here, the value, I can give the value for the first one to be a wildfire, for example. And then the option text is going to say wildfire. Now this is hard coded in, but it's only for demonstration. So let me just go ahead and save that. And let me paste this down a few more times. Let me change this into something like volcanoes. And then let me change this third one into earthquakes. Save that. And then we should see our select option right there. So let's style it out because I want it to appear on the top right. So I'm going to go inside the form, and you know what? I need this form to be inside the div so that I can display the div as absolute. So give it a class name here. And I'm going to say absolute, and then bring it to the top by 6 and to the right by 6, and give it an insanely high z index because the map is also positioned absolute. So give it a z index of about 1000 to make sure that it is always going to be on the top right here. Now, obviously, we don't want this to happen. We want to style it a bit better. So we're going to say this inside the, where is it? Inside the select, I'm going to give it a class name, and I'm going to say give it a text neutral -800 with a font semi-bold and a text small, and not, let's place the text small right here. So text-sm, text-sm. Save that. Let's see what happens. We have that. Okay. And then the options are also going to have this kind of like semi-bold to it, but I don't want to style them out yet because this is all hard coded in and we're going to remove it anyway. So we have the wildfire. Let's go ahead and give it a padding. So give it a padding all round of 6. And now this right should be 6, not 0. That's why I was wondering why it's all the way to the end. I thought I'd set it to 6. So padding all round of 6, and then let's remove the outline that it has. So outline none, give it a border none, and then on focus, let's give it a ring of 2. And then on focus, let's give it the ring color to be neutral dash 600, and then let's give it a slight transition and then save that. Let's see what happens. Oops. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Padding of 6 is too big. Let's say padding of 2, and then let's also say rounded dash large just to make it slightly rounded. There we go. There we go. So when we focus on it, then it gets this kind of outline, and then when we focus out of it, then the outline disappears. But I can't really see it all that well right here. So like I can give it a BG here. I can give it like a BG neutral dash 200 to make it a bit visible. Let's see. I mean, that's also okay. I don't mind that. Like, it doesn't interfere with the application too much, but I want to give it a slight box shadow so that I can see it better. So I'll give it a shadow class here, and that should do it. That should do it. Okay. Now, once we have that, what we need to do is we need to populate these options dynamically. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and hit the endpoint that is called categories so that we can get the title of every category, because we don't want to add these categories by hand, you know, because there are quite a bit of them, 13 of them. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and create another state value here called categories. So const categories and set categories, and this is going to be equal to use state, and by default is going to be an empty array, because what we need to get is the data dot categories. So simply the same thing right here. So let's just copy this, and then let's say async function get categories, and then we can paste that in. But what we need is we need to remove this part right here at the end, because the endpoint that we want is the categories. And then once we get the categories, we can say set categories instead of set events. So set categories into the data dot categories, because that's what we're getting back from the API. Now once we do that, then we need to go ahead and call this function inside our use effect. So use effect, and then I'm going to pass in my callback function once again with an empty dependency array. What have I done? Use effect, okay, my callback function, and then an empty dependency array. Oh my god, what am I typing? An empty dependency array so that it only runs on the initial render. And then let's call the function get categories, and then let's go ahead and say this. What we need to do now is remove all of this, and then we need to map over our categories. So I'm going to say categories dot map, and then for every category that I get back, then I want to render out an option. So an option for the category, close it out, and then the text for the option is going to say category dot title, meaning category dot title right here, and then the value for the option is going to be the category dot id, so that it searches it by the category ID right here. So that's how we can search for the categories. Now let's save that. Let's see what we have on the screen. Let's see. So we have right there. So it's now being populated. As you can see, now we have all the options right there. Now let's style out this to look a bit better. So inside the option, we can have any class name, and I can say text neutral dash 800 and text small and font semi bold. Save that. Let's see what we have on the screen. We have that. I think that looks much better. And I don't know whether we can add in like some padding for the option. Let me see, padding all around of 2. Will that increase the option size? Let's see. Okay, it doesn't. I can't remember how to style out the option in CSS, but you can research how to do that. I mean, if you want to make it look better really, but I think this is okay. Now let's see. Once we have that, then what we need to happen is whenever the event type changes, which is this one right here, then we need this function to rerun. Then that means that inside our use effect, we need to add in the event type as a dependency. So event type, because the event type is going to be changing for every option once we click on a particular option. So the way we do that is we need to go ahead and pass in the on change here, and then we're going to say when this changes, we want to access the synthetic event of E, and then we're going to say that set event type because that's the one that that's the state value that we want to change, the event type, into e.target.value, which is going to access the value right here, and then it's going to populate it. It's going to populate this. It's going to change it up depending on the value of the category that we click on. And then when this changes, then it's going to be added inside here. It's going to be appended inside our get request. And when this changes, then the use effect is going to rerun, which is going to rerun this entire function. So our functionality is working. Let's test it out. Let's see. So let that reload, and we have our map. So now when I click on, let's see which one has it, severe storms. Let's click on severe storms, and it should now show our severe storms. Okay, it's not showing our severe storms. It's not showing the severe storms. So set event type. We're getting the category, set event type into category. Oh, you know what? The form doesn't have a submit. So on submit, let's create our submit handler. So handle submit is going to be the function that we want. So let's create the handle submit function. So function handle submit. We want to prevent the default behavior of the form. So e.prevent default. And then when that happens, when we submit the form, we want to call the get events function. So this one right here. So let's save that. Let's try it out once again. So it's going to reload. Let's try it out. Let's zoom out just a bit. Let's try it out again. So severe storms, we should see some storms right here. Okay. Okay, it's not working. It is not working. So let's see. Let's check out our console if there is anything happening in the console. What have I done? I wanted the console. So in the console, let's see, it says, what's this? Each child in a list. Oh, really? I did not add a key? Are you serious? That's a basic thing. Inside the marker, let's give it a key of event.id. So event.id. I can't believe I forgot to add a key when that's the most basic thing of React. Okay, let's just reload it to get rid of that error. And it says what? What is this now? What? It's still showing the key. Oh, wait a minute. We are mapping over. The key needs to be here. What am I doing? The key needs to be here as well. So category.id. Save that and then reload it. Okay, it's going to reload. And we should now have... Okay, so we're not getting any error. But when I try to search for severe storms, we're getting nothing on the screen. Let's try and console log. Let's console log the data.events here. So console log data.events to see whether we are getting back any events. So by default, we should get back the volcanoes, which are 29. And then when I search for something else, severe storms, then, see, we're not getting back any data. So that means that our select is wrong. So our select is wrong. ID, event type, option, key. Oh, you know what? You know what? The on change should not be here. It should be on the select, because we are changing the select. We are not changing the option. So when we change the options inside the select, then it should set the event type into that particular value of the option that we click on. So let's save that. And then let's try it once again. So let's zoom out. I think now it should work. So when I select severe storms, we should console log. Okay, there we go. There we go. So it also console logs it. We have 5 events, and then it plots it on the map, because every event has latitude and longitude, and it also gives the title. Okay, that is looking much better. And then now when I click on wildfires, then it should now populate the entire map with the wildfires. And as you can see, there are quite a lot, so it takes a bit of time to populate it. But I think that also depends on how fast your machine is or how fast your internet is. Mine is not so fast for either of them. There we go. So we have the wildfires. There are quite a bit of them. And I want to mention something. I tried to create a different icon for every natural event, Like for wildfires, I had the fire icon, and then for earthquakes, I had like the earth icon or something like that. But it was quite a bit difficult and I could not get it to work. So that's why I opted to use like this like bland looking one, you know. I mean, you know, it does the job really, but if you don't like this icon, you can go ahead and all you need to do is just simply change the icon from your public folder, and then in the icon, just reference that particular icon. That's really how you change it. Now, I think that is going to be the end of the project. So all you need to do is just commit it to GitHub. So I can close this, and I can close this and this, and I can open up my GitHub, and then Control J, I can close down my terminal right there. What was this error? What is this? Window is not defined. This was trying to access the window element. But you can see that nothing is breaking, so that's okay. So what we need to do is create, what's it called? A repository. Let me close all of this. And I think I can zoom out now just so that I have some bit more space to work with. Let's say clear. And then let's create a new repository. And then for the repository, let's create a new one here. Let me call it natural. Oh my God. What? Oh, my computer. Oh, okay. Natural dash event dash tracker. And then let me prefix it with the NextJs. So NextJs dash natural event tracker. And then let's say create repository. And then let's go ahead and copy this link. And then I'm going to say git remote add origin, and then paste in that link, and then git branch dash m, capital M, main to change it to the main branch. And then I can say git add package start to add both of the package lock and the package JSON. And then git commit dash m, and I'm going to say install leaflet and react leaflet. And then git add public to add my images. So git commit dash m, and I'm going to say add image, or add marker icon. I think that's better. And then for the components, we have the icon. So cd into components, and then git add icon.js, git commit dash m, map icon component, and then git add map.js, git commit, and this is the map, or let me say render map. And then cd out of this, let's go back and let's say cd into the app folder. So cd app, git add layout.js, git commit dash m, and I'm going to say change title and description, and then git add page.js, and inside the page, what would you do? Oh, it's the I even asked that. Okay, so git commit dash m, render map, and add search filter, and git push dash u origin main, which should now push it to the main branch. So let's wait a minute, and there we go. So when we reload it, then it's going to be right there. So this is going to be the link in case you don't find it in the repository, in case I forget to add it, but the link is right here. Or you can simply go into my profile and then search for this repository, and then you're going to get it. So that is going to be the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new by building this out, and this is actually a very nice project that you can showcase to people. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.